Welcome to our OSHA Focal Point series. I'm Dr. John Mulroy, Director of the Pennsylvania OSHA Consultation Program, housed in the world-renowned Safety Sciences Department here at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. These videos were created with the essential, need-to-know OSHA compliance information to supplement your safety and health training. Addressing OSHA's most frequently cited standards, like lockout-tagout, fall protection, hazard communication, and machine guarding, these videos can help your organization anticipate, identify, evaluate, and control workplace safety and health hazards. We hope these critical OSHA focal points assist you in preventing future injuries and illnesses. If you still have questions or you need no-cost OSHA compliance assistance, we're here to help. All you need to do is reach out to us at IUP using the link below and request this no-cost OSHA compliance assistance service. It's that easy. Thank you for choosing the Focal Points video series. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to be the first to know when new safety and health content is added to this channel. Have a safe day, everyone. Today's topic is overhead cranes. The purpose of today's topic is to provide you with the essential need-to-know information about the hazards associated with using overhead cranes. During this short presentation, we will briefly discuss the following topics, which include: how often must overhead cranes be inspected? What are the common hazards associated with using overhead cranes? And what are the common rigging hazards associated with slings, chains, and wire rope? Overhead cranes defined. An overhead crane is a crane with a movable bridge, carrying a movable or fixed hoisting mechanism and traveling on an overhead fixed runway structure. Common parts of an overhead crane include the trolley hoist, conductors, front and rear girders, an operator cab, and a pendant push button. There are several types of overhead cranes, including gantry, semi-gantry, cantilever, storage bridge, and wall cranes. The types of hoists that you will find in a workplace include typical monorail, power-operated hoists, and electric hoists. Occasionally, it may be necessary to modify a crane for a particular use. Cranes can be modified and re-rated if the modifications in the supporting structure are checked thoroughly for the new rated load by a qualified engineer or the equipment manufacturer. The new rated load must be plainly marked on each side of the crane. If the crane has more than one hoisting unit, both shall have its rated load marked on them and shall be clearly legible from the ground to the floor. Inspections. Pre-shift inspections should include hoisting and lowering equipment, the trolley travel, the bridge travel, limit switches, locking, safety devices, as well as trip setting of hoist limit switches. As part of your pre-shift inspection, visually inspect and check for any loose or missing parts. Check the end stops. End stops prevent the trolley from running off the beam. Know the location of any disconnect switch that will cut the power off to the hoist or the crane. Make sure it is readily accessible. Make sure the wire rope is properly seated in the drum and the shift grooves without any slack or overlapping. Frequent inspections. Items to be inspected include operating mechanisms or maladjustment, deterioration or leakage in pneumatic or hydraulic parts, and hooks with deformation or cracks. Frequent inspections also include hoist chains and end connections for any wear, twisting, or distortion, running rope and end connections for wear and broken strands. Additional items that require inspection are the functional operating mechanisms for excessive wear and as needed, and any rope reeving according to the manufacturer's recommendations. During periodic inspections, items that need to be inspected include deformed, cracked, or corroded members of the crane, loose bolts or rivets, any cracked or worn shivs and drums, worn, cracked, or distorted parts such as pins, bearing, gears, or rollers, excessive wear on any braking parts, any inaccuracies in the load, in the wind, or other indicators, fossil fuel or electric motors, excessive wear of chain drive sprockets and the chain itself, and deteriorated electrical components such as push buttons, limit switches, or contactors on the pendant. Periodic inspections. Annual inspections shall be performed at a minimum of once every 12 months, regardless of the severity of the crane usage. Written reports need to contain deficiencies or damage to the crane that need to be corrected or repaired. Written reports shall be kept by a designated person on site on the company presence so it's available upon request by any regulatory person or agency. A good preventative maintenance program based on the crane manufacturer's recommendations must be implemented. Any unsafe conditions that are detected during the inspections must be corrected prior to using the crane again. Only trained designated personnel should perform the required maintenance and repairs. The following procedures must be followed when performing maintenance. The crane to be repaired must be located where it will cause the least interference with other cranes and operations in the area. All controllers must be at the off position. The main or emergency switch must be open and locked out in the open position. Adequate lighting while maintenance is being performed is also critical. Warning or out of order signs must be placed on the crane and on the floor beneath the hook where visible from the surface level. All guards must be reinstalled, all safety devices reactivated, and maintenance equipment removed prior to placing the crane back into operation. Overhead and gantry cranes, where other cranes are in operation on the same runway, all rail stops should be in place. Prior to moving a load, as a worker, you need to ensure that all loose materials, parts, blocking, and packing have been removed from the load before lifting. Ensure that any slack from the sling is removed before the load is lifted, and make sure the lifting device is seated firmly in the saddle of the hook. While operating the crane warning signal or horn must be sounded when the load comes near personnel. Load should never be carried over top of other personnel. No load should be left suspended and unattended. Audible and voice communication should be kept with the operator at all times, if not a standard signal system used. Operators cannot be engaged in activities that distract his or her attention while operating the equipment. For example, talking on a cell phone or a walkie-talkie. It's important to keep clear of the load. When workers must be in the fall zone to handle a load, the load must be rigged by a qualified rigger, and tag lines should be used. To avoid swinging loads, locate the hoist directly above the lifting point of the load before lifting. Lower those loads directly below the hoist. Keep all hoisting ropes vertical. Do not push or pull on that load. Always maintain 2 full wraps of cable on the hoisting drum. If we're lifting loads at or near our crane capacity, test the hoist brakes by returning the master switch or the push button to the off position after raising the load a few inches off the floor. If the brakes fail to hold, lower the load to the floor slowly and do not operate the crane. Report the situation immediately to management and do not use this crane until it is repaired. If you need to leave a crane, never leave the controls unattended while a load is suspended. If it becomes necessary to leave the controls, lower the load to the floor. Always familiarize yourself with the location of the emergency disconnect switch. If loss of electrical power occurs, place the controls in the off position to prevent the unexpected startup upon restoration of power. To avoid unsafe overhead crane use, disconnect power to a hoist that is unsafe or in need of repair. Arrange to have the disconnect switch locked out and the control panel tagged with an out of order or do not operate tag. And never operate a hoist that has been tagged with an out of order or do not operate tag, or if ever in your own opinion is unsafe to operate. These pictures show typical rigging and slings that you may find on your job site. And that includes synthetic, natural, chain, and wire rope. Capacity and angles are critical to safe crane usage. The load capacity of the sling is determined by its weakest component. Always check for the rated capacity on your slings. Never overload a sling, and remember, the wider the sling legs are spread, the less the sling can lift. Slings need to be inspected each day prior to their use, and this inspection includes chain, wire rope, synthetic slings, and all their attachments. A thorough facility-wide inspection is required to be performed at least once every 12 months for chain slings. To safely use slings in the workplace, you need to know what the capacity of the sling is. And in order to know what the capacity of that sling is, a tag must be present. When you're doing your routine inspections of this equipment, what is the condition of the sling? Always look for damage from chemicals, stress, wear, cracks, knots, thermal exposures, kinks, melting, snags, or tears. If you find a damaged sling in your work area, immediately take it out of service and tag it so no one else is able to use it. Contact your supervisor to get that sling repaired or replaced. How do we protect our slings? Slings should always be stored off the floor and hung on racks in a clean and dry environment. And never drag a sling across the floor. When rigging, you always hook with a closed hook arrangement where the hook tips are facing outward. To get more help with cranes, go to OSHA.gov. Thank you.